My name's David, and our hope for today comes out of 2 Samuel chapter 9 and the story of Mephibosheth. But first, a little bit of context. This past Sunday, we talked about how to be a better friend and explored the life and the relationship between David and Jonathan. And part of their relationship was a covenant of mutual protection. Right? 1 Samuel 20:14 and 15 reads, "Show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the earth." You see, it was pretty common in the ancient Near East that when a new king came into power, he would kill off all his rivals and his enemies. It was important to do this because it would allow you to secure the throne, and it made your claim on the throne so much stronger. And this covenant between David and Jonathan is that David will not kill Jonathan or his family when he comes into power. It's actually a pretty big ask of David because both Jonathan and his sons would have been an equal or even a greater claim to the throne because of their bloodline through Saul. But David agrees and he honors the covenant. Years later, David gets the chance and finally it does ascend the throne. And there's a battle and then there's a transfer of power. And this is where we're first introduced to the character of Mephibosheth. In 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4. It says, "Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth." And we don't hear about Mephibosheth for another 5 chapters. At this point, David is reigning over all of Israel, but he remembers the covenant he made with Jonathan. So in 2 Samuel chapter 9, David asked, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of Saul's household named Ziba. They summoned him to appear before David, and the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" "At your service," he replied. The king asked, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba answered the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet." "Where is he?" the king asked. Ziba answered, "He is at the house of Machir, son of Ammiel, in Lo-debar." So David had him brought from Lo-debar, from the house of Machir, son of Ammiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, "Mephibosheth." "At your service," he replied. "Do not be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth bowed and said, "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, "I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops, so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table." And so this is what I love about the story of Mephibosheth. Yes, David honors his covenant. Yes, we get to see the chesed loyalty we talked about on Sunday, the chesed loyalty between David and Jonathan played out over the generations. But there's a picture in this story that I love, and this is it. Right? Mephibosheth is injured during the transfer of power, and years later he is invited to sit at the king's table because of his father's Jonathan relationship with David. Right, one more time. Mephibosheth is broken because of something that wasn't his fault, but because of who his father is, he's invited to the table of a king forever. And here's the really clear gospel parallel that I love in the story. It's we are broken people, but because of who our heavenly Father is, right, because of the relationship we have with our heavenly Father, we're invited to sit at God's table forever. Let each of us take hope in the fact that we're not invited to the table by our merit or our abilities, but by the relationship we have with our Father.